If you turn on page 23 of your diocesan convention booklet, you will see 5 paragraphs to describe the extraordinary professional ministry of Dr. Elisa Kimball. And all of that is true. But what those of us who know Lisa carry in our hearts about her is her absolute love of God, her passion for the gospel, her extraordinary energy and perseverance in helping us to know in our hearts the love of God for ourselves and a contagious desire to share it with others. And there is no end to the number of people in this church and in this world who have been touched by the love and the friendship of Lisa Kimball. In fact, if I could count, if I started to keep track of the people who have said to me, "Oh, Lisa is one of my very best friends," and I count myself among them, we are a long and a very blessed group of people that count Lisa as one of our very best friends. And her heart is big enough to hold us all, and with Jesus as her constant companion and guide, help us to believe that the best days of our church are still before us. So without further word, it is my great pleasure to introduce one of our very best friends, Dr. Lisa Kimball.
I already thought the bar was high. Now it's really high, or uber high, as the kids would say. Thank you, Marianne. The backstory of my being here is kind of at least funny to me. It wasn't very long after Bishop Marianne was elected that I got the phone call asking if I would be the keynote speaker at today's convention. And as a very good friend of hers, and as thrilled as I think many, if not most of you were by the election, there was only one right answer, right? I said, yeah, sure, I'll do this. But I really believed, because we sort of said this, that I was the placeholder that would keep the diocesan staff calm as all of the transition was unfolding and convention had to begin to be planned and we had a new bishop. So I really, really, really didn't know that I was doing this. And then the phone call came and okay, we're planning convention. What are you going to speak on? Gulp. So here we go. It is a huge privilege and honor to be with you and to be one of you. I am an active member of Epiphany Church in DC and consider that one of the greatest blessings of my life. Last year at this very same convention, probably from this very same podium, Brian McLaren stood here and said, "This is the Episcopal moment." He shared his observation that the Episcopal structure itself has remarkable inherent powers of self-renewal. He's probably right. He went on to say that every moment of Episcopal crisis is also a moment of Episcopal opportunity. Well, this diocese, if any, has lived a year of Episcopal opportunity, and I commend you on a year of resilience. From the retirement of your much-loved Bishop Shane, through a search process and an election for a new bishop, through significant leadership changes here at the National Cathedral, financial strains in many of our congregations, and don't forget the earthquake. You know something about crisis or near crisis, and you have absolutely demonstrated Episcopal resilience. Today, I see you, I see us, experiencing the power of self-renewal. People are excited, people are hopeful, and people believe that we have a future yet more wonderful than we can imagine. So I actually really believe that we have empirical data. I think this convention is data of sorts to support Brian McLaren's hypothesis Yes, in fact, this is the Episcopal moment in the Diocese of Washington. We will, with God's help, we will, join me, with God's help. While we have much for which we are profoundly grateful, there are also very real challenges before us. As amazing and wonderful and articulate and inspiring and humble and honest and fun as Bishop Marianne is, and those were all words I heard yesterday, her deep personal faith and her gifted leadership is not enough to build a healthy diocese. Everything beautiful and everything brilliant about Marianne is actually a reflection of the gifts and capacities of the people of this diocese. You did the discerning. You did the voting. You knew who you were and who you needed to come alongside your common life at this time in our history. And now together, with God's help, the bishop, the clergy, and the laity of this wonderful diocese, it's time for all of us to shake the dust off our feet and set out in mission. While I also appreciate the language of renewal and revitalization, if we are really honest, for many cradle Episcopalians and for other mainstream Americans, the challenges before us as a church today may in fact be the first time that we are actually like the disciples in today's gospel, having to proclaim the kingdom of God and the healing through Jesus Christ with nothing extra, nothing more than our true selves, nothing more than our own stories along the way. For generations, being Christian, especially from a mainstream denomination, was very easy. A lot of people like us were doing it. Now we find ourselves in a more vulnerable, less prepared place of being, and the stakes are high. We can no longer fake it with our beautiful buildings, with our beautiful liturgies, with our wonderful music. We can't hide a level of faith insecurity inside our tradition. The luxury, I believe, the gift, I believe, of our time is not just that it is the Episcopal moment. The gift of our time as core members and supporters of the Episcopal Church is that we can no longer take anything about the Church for granted. It's back to or down to basics. Just as the 12 disciples in today's gospel, we are challenged to commit ourselves to Jesus' mission, just as we are baptized Christians who trust being loved and being forgiven is enough for the road. And even then, it isn't easy or convenient. We can start down the road, we can trust, we can love, we can forgive others, we can heal. But just like the disciples who thought that they finally had their leader to themselves, they could celebrate their early ministries, a time to relax, a time to be with him. All those crowds started to appear. And darn it anyway, if Jesus didn't start welcoming more people and sharing more good news and blessing more things and breaking bread with even more folks. We don't have Jesus to ourselves. We are privileged to enter into the mission that Jesus is already living. So my goals now are pretty simple, but they're ambitious in the amount of time that we have. I want to try to honor, as best I know how, the very diverse and extraordinary ministries of this diocese. I want to build on our existing strengths, both human and institutional. I want to cultivate your God-given imaginations for Christian mission in a world of constant change. And I want to ground that mission in Christian formation, the making of disciples. At the heart of this little Venn diagram is what I call the sweet spot, that place where we are called today, tomorrow, and for the rest of our lives to serve God with the gifts that God gave us, created in God's image, the Imago Dei as we are. I'm going to show you a video. And I want you to be thinking, what does this have to do with Christian mission?
We're quite content to be the odd browser out. We don't have a fancy stock abbreviation to go alongside our name in the press. We don't have a profit margin. We don't have sacred rock stars that we put above others. We don't make the same deals, sign the same contracts, or shake the same hands as everyone else. And all of this is fine by us. We're a pack of independently spirited, fiercely unconventional people who do things a little differently. Where another company may value the bottom line, we value, well, values. When a competitor considers making something proprietary, we strive to set it free. And while most products and technologies are developed behind closed doors, ours are cultivated out in the open for everyone to see. We're not beholden to stake, share, or power holders. We answer to no one but you. And we don't operate this way for the fun of it, even though it is incredibly fun. We operate this way because we believe it's the right thing to do. We believe in principle over profit. We believe that secrecy is trumped by honesty, and corporate interest by community. We believe that the web is more cared for than owned, more of a resource to be tended to than a mere commodity to be sold. And we strongly believe in innovation that puts users front and center and squarely in the driver's seat. But most importantly, we believe in you. We believe that the world's best browser is made possible by engineers, programmers, designers, and people just like you, who give their time, talents, energy, and support to the cause. And we believe that together, with this cause in mind, we can continue to innovate for the benefit of the individual and the betterment of the web, so that it always and forever serves the greater good. We are all Mozilla Firefox, and we're not just a different kind of browser. We're a browser that's making a difference.
So regardless of how you feel about your internet browser, that's an open source browser. No one makes money in this my little PR piece here. We're not the only people in the world promoting our mission. We're not the only people who have passion and articulation and confidence in what we believe. We have to learn to tell our stories in ways that are so compelling that people notice, are moved, are transformed, are willing to commit themselves to the way of Jesus and to act in the world as people who live as if they actually believe what they committed to. Okay, one more. And this one I'm going to ask you to call out some ideas loudly without microphones when we're done. What in the heck does this have to do with the mission of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington? Oops, sorry. It'd be helpful if I played the video.
It's not over for us today.
The excitement is in the air.
I'm in it to win it. Why else would I be down here?
Giving up that easily, trying to.
My first question, what was that? Okay, that was the Quidditch World Cup. Okay, somebody sort of 2/3 of the way down who knows what Quidditch is, just raise your hand, who's willing to yell out one or two sentences. Okay, I see a hand in the back left, because if you yell, the people in front of you will probably hear. What is Quidditch? Someone in the back had their hand up. There you go. It is the game that comes from the Harry Potter series, the 7 books by J.K. Rowling. Okay, what does this have to do with mission in the Diocese of Washington or in the Christian church? One or two ideas from anybody. It's a great story, okay? So maybe we have a great story. It's fun. What else? It's what? It's impossible. That's pretty close. That's very good. How about this? The Quidditch World Cup is now this huge event that brings teams from all sorts of colleges and universities together. They play hard and fast and laugh. They have made real something that they read about or maybe watched the movie about that had not yet been real. They made real something that was a common narrative across the books. It now has form. It is now an incarnate version of what they read in a book. We can make the gospel real. And just in case you think, okay, this is fine, that's a lot of wasted energy, but I guess they get some good exercise, that's terrific. Most, if not all, of those Quidditch teams have deep social justice, community service commitments. They are part of a network of young adults who are passionate about making this world better. And while they're doing it, are having a heck of a lot of fun playing Quidditch. So there are organizations, and this is just a quick screenshot from one of them. This is of these Harry Potter foundations, these associations that actually gather these young adults, pick social issues, gather the resources, and go out into the community locally and globally to make a difference. So, the HPA, the Harry Potter Alliance, we are an army of fans, activists, nerd fighters, teenagers, wizards, and muggles. Some reality, some imagination, dedicated to fighting for social justice with the greatest weapon we have, love. Join us. It's a big world out there, folks. We have an even bigger God, and there is room for all of us. I don't see any of this as competition. I see this as opportunity. I see these as places from which we can draw resources, ideas, places and practices that can help our imagination. But we have to be realistic. Even in the church, our religious literacy is very poor. Stephen Prothero, a faculty person in Boston, in 2007 wrote a book called Religious Literacy. He claims that today religious illiteracy is at least as pervasive as cultural illiteracy. And he would argue, and I would support him, it is more dangerous. In his very preliminary research, he figured out that about 10% of American teenagers could name all 5 of the world's major religions. But 15% couldn't even name one. They could not say Christianity or Islam or Judaism. 60% of all the people, adults and young people that he surveyed, believe that the Bible holds about all of the answers that we need in human life. 60%, that's a good number, right? But only 50% of the adults he interviewed can name one gospel. So there's this sacred text over there that means something. It's got lots of answers. I have no idea what's in it. I have no idea that it has books, a New Testament, an Old Testament, much less what a gospel is, much less what the word gospel means. Stephen Prothero defines religious literacy as the ability to understand and use the religious vocabulary, symbols, images, beliefs, practices, scriptures, heroes, themes, and stories that are used in American public life. That's a pretty broad definition. I would wager a bet that the Harry Potter literacy is higher than the Christian literacy within certain demographics in our country today. I don't think that's all bad that they're Harry Potter literate, but I think it's a tragedy that we're not also literate in a religious tradition. He goes on to say that religious illiteracy makes it difficult for Americans to make sense of a world in which people kill and people make peace in the name of Christ or Allah. It's serious, folks. We have to be about the process of making disciples. Disciples who know and love God with all of who they are and with the compassion to love others with the same generosity as God has loved them. Edward Deming, the quite famous 20th century industrial consultant who changed the face of Japanese industry, revolutionizing what was often called the quality industry. He said a wonderful phrase that I hold on to. He said, "Your system is perfectly designed to give you the results you're getting." Your system is perfectly designed to give you the results you're getting. Now, if we're in the church and we're doing what we do every Sunday, it feels good, right? We like our system the way it is. But equally, if we like it so much that others can't get in or find their way to that same level of joy, it may not be serving us so well. I put just a bunch of random words that are typical of an Episcopal congregation into the Wordle program, and one of the shapes that came out was this thing that sort of looked like a church to me. And I thought that was quite impressive. But this is a reminder to me and to us that the things that we take for granted are foreign to most people around us. In 2010, there was a study conducted by a research group at Hartford Seminary called the Faith Communities Today Study. And it's an interfaith study of the health and vitality of faith communities. But what was rich and wonderful about this longitudinal study is that they're able to aggregate the data and they're also able to disaggregate it. So we have very good data on just the Episcopal Church from within this larger study. What we found across religions, but particularly in the Episcopal or main line, which are now often called old line denominations, is that congregations are less healthy than they were 10 years ago. Now, that's probably not a surprise to many of us. There absolutely are exceptions. But overall, our congregations are less healthy than they were. The study measures this less health in a number of ways. One of them is we have drops in financial health and drops in our attendance. There's a continuing and persistent level of conflict in 2 out of 3 congregations. That says a lot about the joy, the good news that is muffled or less visible or less accessible to others. We have an aging membership, and in this study, that came out as a signal of declining vitality, because in general, as we age, we become less malleable, less able to be adaptive to new change. But I want to put a side comment in here about aging, and I think it's very important. The world's population is growing, and the world's population is aging. With very low birth rates in developed countries, coupled with birth rate declines in most developing countries, the projected increase in the population, 65 and over, by 2050, is such that it will be 2.5 times that of the population from 0 to 4. So people over 65 in 2050 will outnumber people 0 to 4 by 2.5 times. That is an exact reversal of the situation in 1950. Throughout the world, there are more people aged 65 and over already than the entire populations of Russia, Japan, France, Germany, and Australia combined. Many of us are in this room. The United States contains more people aged 65 and older than the total population of Canada. What this means among the researchers is that we are beginning to pay attention to the fact that 65 plus is not one demographic. are living longer, people are living healthier lives, and on average, particularly in this country, people are more educated. We now have a young old age, which is considered 65 to 74. We have an old age, which is 75 to 84. And we have an old age, which is 85 plus. Now, while you laugh, the single fastest age demographic in our country is 85 plus. That's important, I think, because in that generation, and as the baby boomers rise into these ages, is incredible wisdom, incredible capacity for mission. The dramatic growth in numbers and proportions, increased life expectancy, and the energetic lifestyles will give us people who know God and can lead others and can support us in ministry for longer than we've ever known as a church in this country. With that, it's also important to know that the age-based wealth gap is unprecedented. Older adults have made dramatic gains relative to younger adults in their financial means. This is partly, and it's a 10-year history, this is not just the recent economic recession. People generally accumulate wealth as they age, so it's not a surprise to find a large age-based difference between people 65 and over and those in their 20s and 30s. But the current gap between the households headed by individuals who are 65 and over and those who are 35 and under was 10 to 1 in 1984. It is 47 to 1 in 2009. We have to recognize that while our congregations are aging, our country is aging, and mission for the church is going to depend on the generosity and compassion and involvement and creativity and faithfulness of men and women 65, 75, 85, and 95 years old. Back to the facts study. 75% of our old line congregations have less than 10% young adults. That's also a concern. We can be healthy older, but if we don't have generations behind us, we know what the future looks like. The median worship attendance has dropped from 130 to 108. That means as many congregations are above that number as there are below that number. But more importantly, 1 in 4 of our congregations has less than 50 people in worship. We know, because many of us are living in those places, that that strains the financial model of what congregational life used to be. We cannot deny that, but it also opens opportunities for us to be in mission and ministry together. So we are declining, but the world we are in is also changing. People are less and less attached to religion. And one of the most poignant measures of that for me came out of a 2008 study. 27% of Americans said that they did not anticipate having a religious funeral. Now that's the older Americans they're thinking about too. That says something, that 27% of our people were already content to die and not have some level of religious involvement at their funeral. Even more pressing, perhaps, is a more recent study that just came out that 44% of Americans spend no time at all seeking what they called eternal wisdom. So the sort of romantic idea that if we just get our act together, everybody is searching for purpose, everybody is searching for meaning, even that is being challenged by the researchers. So our work is really challenging. We love our congregations, right? We want them to thrive, and I believe God wants them to thrive. But sadly, when congregations in the fact study were asked, is your worship filled with a sense of God's presence? 36% of the people were able to say, yes, very well. just 36. And only 34% were able to say, yes, our worship is joyful. And only 25% were able to say, yes, our worship is reverent. Those are not, they're over the 18% that Bishop Marianne and I talked about yesterday for change, for being able to move change. But if they're not all committed to change, that's not a strong enough center to begin to change and renew the life of a congregation. So where is our imagination? Congregations were least likely to say the following descriptors characterized their worship services very well. They were least likely to say their worship was innovative, 4%, inspirational, 17%, thought-provoking, 23%. So, especially thought-provoking, right? Episcopal Church, we like that reason thing. So if only 23% of our congregations really think that they're challenged to think differently or deeper in the worship setting, we're missing an opportunity that is absolutely ours to claim. 3 out of 5 young people are leaving the church. Why? Well, what they say is pretty piercing. They say church is boring. Church is judgmental. Church is overprotective. Church is exclusive. Church is unfriendly towards doubters. Church is antagonistic towards science. The Episcopal Church? Church is shallow. These are conditions that we can change. These are not attributes of our theological orientation to loving God. These may be habits that we have fallen into, but they are not permanent descriptors of Christians or Christian Episcopalians. The harsh, but I think exciting opportunity is that congregations are competing in a spiritual marketplace for individuals who define their relationship to the church in terms of their own issues and needs. Thomas Friedman, who many of you probably know quite well as a foreign affairs columnist in the New York Times, has just published a new book. It's called That Used to Be Us, with a very long subtitle. That Used to Be Us, How America Fell Behind in the World It Invented, and How We Can Come Back. Again, we have lots to learn from his writing. He is talking about the possibilities for this nation. He's primarily speaking to civic leaders and educators, but he is an optimistic person. He is not speaking from a tired, patriotic, I wish it were the way it was kind of place. He is the same person that talked about the world being flat when he first anticipated the connections that we would have with digital media. He's now beginning to talk about something further down that road from connectivity to hyper-connectivity. He says that we have a global world now with the IT revolution that is allowing us to be hyper-connected. And because of that hyper-connectivity, we can no longer live and be satisfied with average. Average is over. Average is dead in business and in the church. What will make the difference in our mission, in our lives, and I think in our very personal lives too, is when we find our extra. When we figure out what is our capacity that is over the top of average. He talks at length in the book about the workplace and about the different kinds of jobs that men and women are entering into today. And he talks about the significance of how each person in any workplace now needs to find a way to reinvent themselves in their job over and over and over again. How important it is for us to be even better tomorrow than we are today. To always be reaching, always be trying. Not in a manic, crazy kind of way, way, but in a genuine, rooted sense that as Christians, we know God has given us the capacities to overcome challenge. Whether it's how to solve a problem in an accounting sheet at work, or whether it is how to deal with your own children, and we're juggling the schedules of after school, there's a better way to do it, with more grace, with more confidence, and with more hope. I'm going to tell a quick story about Starbucks this morning. Very early, went to Starbucks. First customer, door opens, very perky employees, kind of recognize me, eager to give me a cup of coffee. I go right up, I pay for my latte. And this young woman looks at me with this kind of awful anxiety, and she says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. They forgot to wash the pots last night. We just can't, we're not ready." And I'm thinking, oh gosh, I wonder how far I have to go. It's early, I wonder where else is open. We're just not ready. It'll be 4 minutes, 4 minutes. Okay? I said, I can wait 4 minutes. She goes, oh, good, thank goodness, thank goodness. Oh, okay, fine, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And then she went on to explain the entire process that she had to do in her 4 minutes as she was doing it, how she has to, with certain things that have to be pulled out and rinsed and put in place and so forth. She worked through this with her colleague, and exactly 4 minutes to the mark, handed me my steamy hot latte. Now, with my steamy hot latte came a voucher, which, because I'm over 50, I have to wear glasses to read. It says, "We apologize if your Starbucks experience was anything but wonderful. We want to know how we can make these things better and always invite you to share your thoughts with us. The next time we see you, please enjoy a beverage on us. We hope your next visit is better." 4 minutes. That is average is dead. That is finding your extra. That is making your mission absolutely meet the need of the potential customer. Okay? I'm not saying we got to give out coupons. I'm not saying we got to give out vouchers. But we have to mean what we say and say what we mean. We can grow, and there are lots of good stories, and after you have time in groups today, we'll hear some of them. Growing congregations, they found in the FACT study, were most likely to strongly agree that they are, 1, spiritually vital and alive, 2, have a strong mission and purpose. That doesn't mean a mission statement printed on the bulletin somewhere in the vestry notes. That means a mission that people in the coffee hour can describe. That they have and are moral beacons. It's not, oh, we'll let anybody in because we so much want everybody, everything's fine. Oh, we don't really like what he's doing with his life, but we love him anyway. No, they're willing to say we stand for something and we know what is true. And they're willing to change to meet new challenges. These growing congregations have figured out how to hold in tension the ministry of recruitment, the ministry of welcome, the ministry of invitation, of hospitality, of come and see, with the ministry of retention, the honoring of those of us who already are here. How do we hold together the rich creative tension between recruitment and retention? You won't be able to see much of this from the back, but these graphs show us that openness to change is dependent on a lot of things. I mean, that growing is dependent on openness to change. Congregations grow when they are open to change. Now, the 2 tallest columns in this little graph on the right-hand side are congregations that are growing. The third one over says they agree that they are able to grow, and the far right says we strongly agree that we are open to change. What's important is that they're not one kind of congregation. Worship innovation is critical to the capacity to grow because it demonstrates our willingness to change. But in this graph, congregations that grow, the green column, the third from the left, says innovation but not contemporary. The yellow column says both innovative and contemporary. So for those of you who feel that your call in your place is to be an Anglo-Catholic congregation, do it well. Innovate well. Honor your tradition well, and make it accessible to people who do not yet know it. For those of you for whom praise music and alleluias and amens make sense, do it well. Find innovation that speaks to who you are in the place that God has called you to serve. Where do I look for some of this inspiration? Another source. If we have shallow church, which in many cases, I changed this slide, and I'm sorry there's all this wordage on it, but never mind. The left column, which nobody can read, is all about moralistic therapeutic deism. It is a language framework for a description of Americans who have this affinity for a religion, particularly in our case Christianity, this sense of sort of contentment that they are religious but cannot tell their story. The researcher who conducted this, Christian Smith, says that people who are moralistic therapeutic deists think of God as a divine butler. God will show up and help and serve me to make me happy when I need God. And so God is sort of convenient and charming and helpful and polite and not particularly challenging. On the other hand, the other column says virtuoso gamers. What we have found, and the researchers are quick to tell us, is that there is in the online gaming world a capacity to be virtuoso gamers. And that language of virtuoso comes from Gladwell, whose book, excuse me. In his book, The Outliers, he talks about the fact that anyone who spends 10,000 hours focused on a particular discipline becomes a virtuoso at that discipline. What we're finding is that in online gaming, which is an exploding business and practice across the world, people of all ages, in particular young people, are spending at least 10,000 hours playing online games before they are 21. And that's the key window that Gladwell talked about to become a virtuoso something. In becoming a virtuoso gamer, those young people are spending as many hours in online gaming as they will spend in school between 5th grade and 12th grade if they are never absent. So not only are we creating virtuoso gamers who have skills and aptitudes that are quite extraordinary, but they are also in a parallel education system that most of us in the church know nothing about. So we have these men, women, and children, and people of all ages play, but we have a whole generation and a half now of young people who are virtuoso gamers. And as Jane McGonigal, a PhD researcher in California, tells us in her wonderful book, Reality is Broken, and in a TED Talk, if you're interested in hearing her live, go to Google and search for TED Talks and type in Jane McGonigal. What Jane tells us is that she believes that these people who are playing these games, who are spending across the world 3 billion hours per week with online gaming, that they are in fact becoming the best versions of themselves, immersed in the moment of intense gaming. What she has found is that when we are gaming with full attention at the virtuoso level, we actually become perhaps what we might call as Christians the full imago Dei that we were intended to be. Now, okay, you say, so what about that? Well, her research goes further. Her research describes the attributes of these virtuoso gamers. And I want to suggest to you that they describe the attributions of a really well-formed disciple. Blissful productivity. In online gaming, there is no unemployment. If you've ever played an online game, put up your hand honestly if you've ever played an online game. I'm impressed. How many of you have played a massive multiplayer online game? Like World of Warcraft, fabulous. Okay, in these games, there is always a challenge. There is always something for you to do. You are never waiting around twiddling your thumbs, waiting for the next great adult forum on something you care about, right? You're always challenged to do something new. Now, you keep doing it and you get blissful because you constantly are trying something and you have this urgent optimism, she describes, to try again, even though 80% of the time, online gamers fail. 80% of the time, the first time they try something, online gamers fail. But what is so brilliant about online gaming is that the level of challenge is just beyond our reach, but not impossible. It is just on the horizon. It is big enough that I want to reach for it, but it's not so far away that I give up. So I play and I become blissful and I have this sense of enthusiasm, and believe it or not, it weaves a social fabric. Online gamers are not all 15-year-old, greasy-haired, pubescent males in the basement who've never had a girlfriend, don't know how to talk to somebody else, and forget to eat. Online gamers are people like you and me. They are from every ethnic background. They are people with educations formally and informally. They are people who love to play. They are people who love a challenge. But what they find in the research about online gaming is that if I play a game with you as my ally or as my enemy, we are playing by common rules. When we play by common rules and you play well, and I'm challenged or supported by your playing, I come out of that game trusting you in a way that I didn't before. Now, I may be trusting your avatar, your non-real personality in this online game, or I may meet you down the road at a coffee shop and actually play the game with you at a coffee shop, even though we're playing on our laptops. But either way, what they found is that online gaming, for the virtuoso level serious gamers, is building a social fabric. And most important to us as Christians is that the reason online gaming is so compelling, so blissful, and so nurturing for people who play is that it gives people epic meaning. Games have a story, and the story gets deeper and longer and more complex and more interesting the higher you power up or the further you go. The bigger the story, the more I want to reach for it. You've all heard of Wikipedia. Second only to Wikipedia, the online open source encyclopedia, is the World of Warcraft webpage. There are more pages for World of Warcraft on the web than for any other single website other than Wikipedia. Why? Because the people who play World of Warcraft are blissful. They want it to be better. They want to bring people on board. They want to tell the story. They want to embellish the story. They want to critique the story. They are engaged, and they add and add and add to that website. So we have these people who are doing all these things, right? Jane McGonigal believes, and her research and her online games for socially constructive purposes have shown that you can transfer from the virtual world to the real world these skills, and they last. She has been able to move people through games that they play about oil consumption, about world peace. She has been able to track people's everyday, real-life changed behavior because of the practice they had in online gaming. What she calls those people who get all of those qualities and go on and out into the world is super-empowered, hopeful individuals. Super-empowered, hopeful individuals. Wouldn't it be awesome if our church was full of people who actually felt like they were super-empowered, hopeful individuals for Jesus Christ? If they actually believed that the hope that we rest in is the resurrection? We have the ultimate epic meaning. We have the ultimate end in our story that is yet to be lived out fully. It's called resurrection. So what do these super empowered, hopeful individuals look like? Well, in the online gaming world, they look like this guy. There is this moment that Csikszentmihalyi called flow, when you're in the zone and it's intense and you're about to reach that next level, and it's about to happen. In the Bible, it's the gifts of the Spirit: self-control, love, kindness, faithfulness, generosity, patience, gentleness, joy. We know we have a story. We have an awesome game, but we're forgetting to teach people how to play it. The mission of the church has not changed. The mission of the church is to restore all people to unity with God and each other in Christ. The world is bringing change to our doorstep, but God is with us, and we can with God's help. It's your turn now. We are all invited to participate in a conversation group with other people from congregations or ministries of approximately the same size as the home base you come from. So if your congregation has about 50 people in church on Sunday, you're going to find yourself in a group with other people from congregations with about 50 people on Sunday. If your congregation has about 300 people in church on Sunday, you're going to find yourself in a group with other people who have about 300 people in church on Sunday. And the purpose of these groups is for you to begin to imagine together what is possible, what God is already doing in your lives as church, and what you need from your diocese to support you in mission more fully. So if you look in your booklet on page 24, you should find a map of the nave with 10 places where groups are meeting. And if you look at your name tag, you should find a number that corresponds to one of those group numbers on page 25. And your mission, if you accept it, is to rise from your seat and navigate your way in this incredibly amazing place with this incredibly awesome epic story to your circle of conversation. You have 15-minute break. You need to be at your circle of conversation at 10:45. Thank you. And when you come back, we'll be here.